Hello, and welcome to On Point. I'm Liz Campos. The University of California system has set a goal increasing its enrollment by 20,000 students in just under 10 years. The UC system's 10 campuses already enroll 286,000 students, and some students are asking, where are these students supposed to go? The Los Angeles Times reports the UC system faces a growing capacity crisis. Projections show campuses may have to turn thousands of qualified applicants away for lack of space if nothing is done.
I lived in the dorm, actually in this dorm, and when I was applying, I was able to get housing. But I know some of my friends had struggles with getting housing and were on wait lists. They were scrambling for off-campus apartments to live in, which are also a 20-minute walk from campus, so that also is a fact that's to weigh in. So housing at UCLA is kind of a struggle in that sense.
The news site EdSource reports the housing crisis is worst at UC Santa Barbara, San Diego, Santa Cruz Merced, and Berkeley. At these schools, campus housing is at capacity and nearby rental housing is expensive. The state legislative analyst reported 1 in 6 UC students lived in hotels, temporary housing, or were even living outdoors because they did not have permanent housing. Today, we look at how California's housing shortage has affected the community around one UC campus. On Point's Bianca Sanchez has more.
Thank you, Liz. Today we have Vice Chair of Isla Vista Tenant Union, Gurleen Pabra, and Leader of Sustainable University Now, George Relles. How are you guys today?
Great.
Doing good.
Great, okay. Both of you live near UC Santa Barbara, correct?
Yes.
So how has the lack of housing for college students affected your community? George, you could go ahead and go first.
I like to talk about it in terms of musical chairs. If you ever remember playing that, and if there's plenty of chairs for everybody, it's fine. But if you take away just one chair, then it's a scramble. And we already had a housing shortage before the university expanded 25%. And by their adding the students and faculty without adding the housing they promised, most of the housing they promised, it's taken a housing shortage and made it into a hyper housing shortage, not just for students, but for everybody.
Okay, and Gurleen, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think everything that George said is right. I see a lot of how it impacts UCSB students and Santa Barbara Community College students as well. I think one of the main things I've seen is an increase in vans just parked on the sides of streets, and you can just tell that those are vans that people are living in. So things like that, it's a lot more crowded, and I guess it's a lot more hectic. And so it's just been a big stress on the whole Isla Vista community, which is what I'm basically a part of.
Okay, so the UC system has a set goal of increasing their enrollment by 20,000 students in under 10 years. To meet the enrollment demand, what does the UC system need to do to address the capacity challenge?
I'm not completely well versed in exactly how it would look, but one of the main things would, of course, be housing. But that's just the start of it. Everything from parking to expanding what the jurisdiction of Isla Vista looks like, because Isla Vista was bought as a part of UCSB so that it could be mainly student housing, expanding resources for all of those students and all the affiliated communities as well. And it's just a lot more money that is coming into play that you have to factor in order to create all of those resources. On top of that, supporting faculty, new professors. I know that UCSB, right before fall quarter started, we had to, there was a lot of classes that were just kind of dropped, a lot of professors that, just weren't confirmed. Students scrambling for classes. So, we're already starting to see a lot of these shortages, even in our not our cafeterias, our dining halls. There are staff shortages there as well. And that's partially because of the whole unemployment crisis that we're seeing in, all of the United States right now too. So it's a lot to support that many students, and it's backlogged right now too.
I just would add to that, and I think your figure is accurate, Bianca, but I'll go a little farther and say that right now there are 70,000 young people who academically are qualified to get into the UC system and can't. And so that's the pressure if you're a taxpayer and your child is wanting to go to a UC school for whatever reasons, either for good reasons, which is they want to study, or maybe less good reasons, which is they want their ticket punched because they think it'll help get a better job. That's the pressure. And I think that when you look at the UC system, you see that it's highly dependent on places that are already pretty busy and already pretty packed, dense. UCLA, San Diego, Berkeley, University of San Francisco. So it's not like virgin territory. It's not like if it was in the Midwest where I used to live that you can just take down a cornfield. And there's a tremendous impact when you add one body typically to a project. That means that you probably have to add 2 or 3 support people, because people who, for example, come to Santa Barbara want to have dry cleaning done. They want ballet lessons, whatever it is. And so it's a long way of saying this is a major infrastructure problem, and money's only part of the answer. I'd suggest the other part of the answer is to look carefully at the whole university system. We have a wonderful state college. I'm not well versed in what we call Northridge, but a wonderful Northridge in Long Beach.
Can you explain what the contract is with the city of Goleta and the Santa Barbara County discussing the capping enrollment?
Sure. There's some confusion because you start with the long-range development plan, which is something that every university has to do before they expand. They have to fill out basically an environmental document. When that happened, when the university brought that forth in 2010, they had 60 meetings, and it was their idea, not ours, their idea that if they added 5,000 students and about 1,800 faculty, they would house them all on campus, period, end of subject. That's what the LRDP says. It was certified by the Coastal Commission. Unfortunately, they asked for support from the city and the county, and the city and county said, well, it's going to have traffic impacts. And so the fundamental agreement is that they'll house everybody on campus, they'll pay for the traffic impacts, the university will, and in return, the city and the county would support the LRDP at the Coastal Commission because they needed that. And that was what they did. But you didn't ask, but I'll just go on to say that the agreement the city and county did was just about traffic. They had left out little things like water, environment, alternative transportation. And in fact, the whole plan, the whole LRDP was a 20th century plan for the 21st century. It sort of said, we're all going to keep doing the same thing, driving cars around campus. And so SUN was formed, Sustainable University Now, because we wanted to fix those things. And that's what we did. But if you just leave SUN out of the equation, the university committed to doing all that housing and in return for supporting the LRDP.
How well do you think UCSB is handling the accusations of breaching its contract to accommodate the housing for the increased student enrollment?
Gurleen, do you want to comment?
I will respond if I think that you can go first. I'll see if I have anything to add.
Well, I think that they're deflecting and using the Munger project as a way of claiming that they're going to be in compliance. They're in denial, and never forget that they're advised by their lawyers. And lawyers are telling them what to say, and they have to do that to reduce their liability. But the dependence on the Munger project, I think, is going to be self-defeating. I'll add that Henry Yang, the chancellor, has done a wonderful job with this university, turning it from a parting school into a high prestige school, and Nobel Prize winners. And I think this is harming his legacy. And I think most people feel that way. And we don't know, I don't know, maybe Gurleen does. Is it Henry Yang who is putting out these messages and depending on the Munger project? Is it the regents who are signatories to these agreements? Is it the legislature? Is it the governor? We don't know.
I'll just add to that. I think that it's completely right to say that feels like the university is deflecting. What it comes down to, in my opinion, and I think what most students have told me so far, is that it's a Band-Aid over a larger issue that's been building up over like a decade now, I think. Somewhere around a decade now, it's been building up, and not really much has been done. Not even close to enough has been done in that time. And now it's, starting to blow up, and we're seeing the repercussions. And the whole Munger project thing is really just the Band-Aid solution that is coming at last minute because we really have no other options. In terms of like public response, I'm not exactly sure how that works either. I know that whenever I've talked with UCSB administration, including Chancellor Yang, they are all very adamant about trying to hear what students have to say and trying to support students and whatnot. And so it's been support from them whenever we can actually get them to speak. But all in all, it's kind of just, like I said, it's just a response to something that deserved a response so many years ago.
Yeah. George, since you are the leader or a leader of Sustainable University Now, can you describe what the group's purpose is?
Sure. We were backfilling for what the city and county should have done. It's that simple. As I indicated, the city and county cared about the transportation dollars, but I'll give you just one example. Many are dependent not on cars, but on bus service. The long-range development plan, as written, said, well, yeah, we're going to add 5,000 students and 1,800 faculty, which usually has families, so maybe 10,000 people to live on campus. And then their EIR, environmental impact statement, said, and this will have zero impact on MTD, our bus service. It's crazy. I mean, nobody would believe that. The EIR said that they didn't have enough water. The Goleta Water District, which serves them, said, you're 100 acre feet short. And the university says, yeah, we know. And they were going ahead with the plan anyway. Because if you house all those people on campus, gosh, they're going to drink and bathe and cook, do things like that. There was almost nothing for bicycles and alternative transportation. Plus environment. The university was going to build in areas that are environmentally sensitive, which is all around them, wetlands, et cetera. So basically, we went in and said, we formed a coalition of 5 groups. We went and told the university, you have to commit to fix all this. They did. We have a signed agreement with them. And they did wonderful things on water. They did wonderful things on the environment. They did wonderful things on transportation, alternative transportation. They built bike paths. They upped the bus service. All of that was great. They just haven't done the housing. And by not doing the housing, they've undone a lot of the good things they committed to. And I should say that they've done, just to be clear, they've done 1,500 beds for 5,000 students. Instead of 5,000 beds, they built 1,500 beds. Instead of 1,800 faculty and staff units for families, they built under 300. That's it.
To resolve the overcrowding issue, UCSB proposed a 4,500 bed building, which is Munger Hall, which included windowless dorm rooms. So they received a lot of criticism for this. Can you guys explain why students would host protests or criticize this idea? Gurleen, you could go ahead.
Initially, there was a lot of, I guess, what could be referred to as rumors that went around about certain aspects of the building that were proved untrue. But there were other aspects that weren't, like you mentioned. The windowless rooms, the layout of it is basically there's like apartments. There's like 8 units on every floor, and each of them has a bunch of single rooms in them. And the single rooms are really small. As a lot of people have pointed out, they're smaller than solitary confinement spaces. And there's like a small kitchen, and the windowed parts of the building are all communal spaces. And the point of it being designed that way, as Munger said, was to incentivize students to come out of their rooms and be more social on an academic level. And I guess one of the things that people had to say about that was, what if I don't want to? you know, it's not your decision whether or not I want to be social. But being stuck in my tiny little room without even having access to light is probably not the best way to do that either. Mental health concerns were the biggest thing. And I think that that's something that's really difficult to talk about when it's a bunch of students in this generation who prioritize mental health with a bunch of administration who, you know, have grown up in a time where that wasn't as prioritized. It's hard to have those conversations because I guess there's some sort of a barrier there between understanding. And so students are really pushing for resources, I guess, that will, I mean, just to start off, there is a Munger Hall. I forget which state it's in. It might be in like Michigan.
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. And it's for graduate students. And there's a few articles about why it was good, but I think the majority of what I read was people just having all the complaints in the world about their circadian rhythms being completely off, not being able to tell what time it is, no matter what they did, however they tried to like introduce light into the situation, try to have some sort of like sunlight cycle in their room. Even if it was artificial light, nothing really worked because nothing compares to the significance of, you know, having access to an actual window. But to go back to my other point, some things that were a concern in the beginning were the fact that there was only 2 entrances, which is in fact not true. There's 2 main entrances, but there's, I think, somewhere around 15 or 16 actual other exits throughout the building, which are for fire safety purposes and whatnot. And so I think that when it became a big issue nationwide, that's when it really blew up, and a lot of those points were exacerbated. But that doesn't, I guess that doesn't like knock down any of the real concerns that students still have to this day, which is you're going to pack thousands of students into these, into this housing and expect them to actually want to live there and expect them to actually grow in their environment. And it's just not sustainable.
I'll add to that if you want, Bianca.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on a macro level, the first thing that's wrong with Munger is it's too late. The students are here. If they start building it now, just as it's designed, it's 3 to 5 years out. You've got to do a whole lot of things. 2, on a macro level, it's next to the airport. And it's pretty tall, and the airport may not be wild about that. 3, the university is served by county fire. County fire doesn't look too thrilled. They don't have a hook and ladder that goes up 11 stories. And even I worked in a high-rise dorm, by the way, at Wisconsin. I was the hall advisor for a high-rise dorm of 2 towers, 13 tall, 13 stories each. And let me tell you, if there's a fire, it's hard to evacuate that many people. It just is, running down staircases. Yeah. Usually they get trampled. And so fire is a huge concern. Environmentally, the scoping hearing that they held said, oh, we're going to be within 25 feet of wetland. That's not something that's a good idea. Also, it's behind harder stadiums. So when there's a game going on, the traffic there will be about 1,000 times worse. They're going to have to deal with transportation issues. I'm not going to get into parking because I'm not a big fan of adding parking because I think we're in the 21st century and we have to be talking about alternative transportation. And I think that when you look at those intersections, they're really tough. So the other thing I'll just mention on a micro level, this suite with 8 rooms and 2 bathrooms sounds great. 5 rooms on one side, 3 on the other, and 2 bedrooms on the other. Do you know what's in the middle, right outside your room? A big table with a TV on the other end. You try studying during Monday Night Football. You try studying while there's a poker game going out just outside your room, or music or anything like that. So having worked in a dorm where we had those lounges, they're at the other end. And finally, I just go back to fire for a second. First thing in a fire is you close the elevators.
Okay, Gurleen, the next question is for you. Can you tell me more about your position as vice chair and how it's reacting to the high demand in housing?
I'm the vice chair of the Isla Vista Tenants Union. We're basically a student-run organization that is funded through our associated students. And basically, it's just pushing for tenants' rights, really. So before any of this situation occurred, what we were designed to do is give some form of legal advice, not on like a super huge scale. We do also work with our legal services program, which we have like lawyers and caseworkers. So we train students to respond to other students on these issues. If that's enough of a summary of what it entails.
Yeah, that's great.
So as vice chair, I basically run it with the chair. We run it together. And I think that there's been a huge influx of people coming to us, asking us for help on things that we just don't know how to respond to. Basically, so for example, a lot of times somebody would come to us and ask, I have a emotional support animal, and my agreement says that I'm not allowed to have any animals. How can I work around that? We can help them with that. Or, hey, I got my security deposit back at the end of the year and they took out way more money than we think that they should have taken out. Can we get some money back out of that? That's something we can help with. And when it comes to like hundreds of students coming to us, like a week or two before school starts and saying, I don't know where I'm going to live and I have to come to school. What can I do? And there's no resources designed for that. And we're like 2 weeks out from the school year. We just didn't really know how to respond. The university did, as you probably know, create agreements with local hotels to house students. And they've been doing everything that they can to get everyone that's in the hotels now into Isla Vista housing and into dorm housing. But from our end, I'm not sure if you know this, but I'm the head of staff in the office of the president. So I basically run both of those offices and I kind of tried to collab those two, and I'm working on that right now, is creating a sort of grant for the both of them that can serve as giving money to these students, because I think that we're in just a time of so much constraint on these students. Like the last thing that you should be worrying about is where you need to live or how you're going to take a shower in the morning. So
following the students being placed in hotel rooms and then the university funding that, what are students willing to do for housing? You could go ahead first, George.
The very first thing that comes to mind is everybody, not just students, but certainly students are hit. Everybody's going to pay more for housing, period. There's such a shortage. Where I live in Goleta, it's amazing. If I rented out my ranch, little 3-bedroom ranch house, I'd probably get $3,000 or $4,000 a month. And if I wanted to put 10 students in it, I could really make out. Not that I'm going to do that. But whether you're a professor trying to buy in, which 2 professors have recently bought into our neighborhood and they can't believe what they spent, or whether you're a student and you're trying to live somewhere decently, and you're finding that you're having to put 10 people in a house, you're still paying way too much. So the number one thing is where everybody's getting hit in the pocketbook. I'd say that's the biggest thing. And it's, housing isn't, they talk about supply chain now and how we're all going to have to wait a little longer for a CD player. Well, the CD player will show up, get off the boat and come here within 12 to 18 months. Housing takes a long, long time to create. And in the meantime, there's a homeless problem. And some of these hotel rooms were slated for temporary housing for homeless. And I'll go back to the tenants union. Landlords can do what they want. Tenants union has been instrumental, for example, in helping people get repairs that they deserve. Unsanitary conditions, tenant union has been great in dealing with unlawful evictions. But when all the bargaining powers for people who own housing, then students are going to suffer and the whole community is going to suffer.
It's a really interesting issue because, George mentioned the whole supply chain thing. And I think that's completely true, where it's like you have such an influx of demand that it looks like there's no sign of that slowing down at all. And basically no supply as of right now. And we have like our one last resort that nobody wants except for administration. And it just creates this whole issue that once again should have been solved a long time ago. And students are the ones who are suffering. I think that what's hardest is that, and this is a conversation that's been brought up probably every single time I've had to talk about the housing crisis, is that it is disproportionately affecting low-income students. And that's one of the scary parts I think about Munger too, that I don't think was talked about enough, is that, you know, it's being advertised as affordable single rooms and you get to live with a bunch of undergraduate students and it's all fun and games. But what it really is it's advertising to students who cannot any longer afford to live in Isla Vista because the demand is rising so fast that the costs are going up.
Yeah.
And so they're forced to live in these situations like in Munger Hall, for example, where they don't want to live and their mental health suffers and probably their academics suffer as well on a wide scale. And so one of the big reasons why in Isla Vista it became such an issue was because a lot of these houses, you have like a unit that's right on the beach that is primarily designed for like what a leasing agreement would say is about like 14 to 16 people, let's say. It's a lot of people. And it's not cheap, but when you split it along amongst a lot of people, students can afford that. And what's happened now is that these ones that usually say that they're from 14 to 16 people, they're now housing somewhere around 12 to 13. They're not housing as many people as they're designed, quote unquote, to house. And so they can pay more for it. If they have less people, they can split it and they can make the split a little bit like bigger for each of them. So they're paying over $1,000 for a double. And that's okay because they can afford it. And what it's done is it's made it a lot harder for students that can't afford much over $900, which is already a lot of money. $900 a month are now being forced to live in circumstances that no student should ever have to live in. So,
well, that is all we have for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today and answering my questions. Really loved having you guys on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and Gurleen, thank you for all you guys do.
You're watching On Point. We'll be right back.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzzed and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. You can watch us on LA 36 and on Santa Clarita Valley Television. For all of us here on Point, I'm Liz Campos.